If we took what the astrologer suggested, somewhere around here, we would get a spread between reality and the forecast of plus or minus 4 months. But I suggest we go down here. We see that here, on average, the spread between reality and forecast is plus or minus 2 months, which is much better than this point. And so I see that this point ideally describes the potential time of birth. On the one hand, I see that the direction agrees very well with reality, and, that is, roughly speaking, on average, when the direction came, then on average the event happened. But the most important thing is that the events lag behind the direction by no more than plus or minus 2 months. They cluster very well. Therefore, looking at this chart, I say that this time is ideal for the time of birth. Thus, with the help of this table, you can set the time of birth, which is ideal purely visually. So, that's all. I did the first part. I rectified the chart and said that, according to my readings, the true time of birth is 17, 26, and approximately 20 seconds. So I go here and I start setting this time. I set 1 minute and I go 2 minutes back. 17:26. Now I set it approximately 20 seconds and move it another 20 seconds forward. Here is 17, 26, and 20 seconds. I consider this rectified time of birth. Now a sign of good manner in my practice is to check this time of birth on some event unknown to me. Svetlana and I had already met before the broadcast. She told me the year, 1997, so I had time to prepare. And my task is to determine a major event this year. And now I will do this, and Svetlana will then tell me what this event is. What will I do? I will remove all the filters here and here. I will set 1996 as the beginning to see the beginning of the year, and now I will go through the directions. First, what do I see? I see that in 1997 we have a lot of directions. Look, they start in February. Here they go, 1997, 1997, 1997. A very rich year in directions. And there's also a lot of directions here. This, of course, significantly complicates my work as an astrologer. Well, this is the real practice. What will I do? First, I will not look at the significators, but at the promissor. I will look for the most negative or the most positive aspects of the planets, because they create either the most negative, destructive, or the most positive events in a person's life this year. And I will, in fact, start from the beginning. I will look at the most negative or the most positive aspects of the planets, because they create either the most negative, destructive, or the most positive events in a person's life this year. The first thing I see is that right in February, at the very beginning, we have a very unpleasant aspect from Saturn. And, first of all, look, Saturn itself is an unpleasant planet. It is malefic. Whatever good it may mean in this chart, it has certain natural negative traits which are accumulated by this square, because the square takes the worst that is in Saturn, and then it sends it to the sign of Leo, to a place where Saturn is in exile. This is very bad. This is a very destructive aspect. And to begin with, I will ask myself, what does Saturn mean? After all, this is a particular aspect of Saturn, that is, a particular facet of whatever it signifies. Saturn is in the 4th house. This means that it shows the affairs of the 4th house most of all. Then Saturn rules the 2nd house. And it also shows money. When we talk about money, we talk about the negative part of Saturn, that is, about some kind of economy. Because Saturn, relative to the 2nd house, does not give a lot of money. It rather gives it through difficulties or through great saving. And in this case, we are talking about an unfavorable aspect of Saturn, either money or affairs of the 4th house. Regarding money, this even causes a certain need, I would say, financial. And regarding the 4th house, it is unknown. There are 2 options, because in the 4th house Saturn can mean either real estate or dad. Where this negative aspect of either dad or real estate is directed, it goes to Jupiter. And Jupiter is the ruler of life itself, of the native herself. That is, we are saying that simply some event, connected with a negative aspect of the fourth house and finances in a bad sense of the word, hits the native's life path this month. This is the first thing that I see. Okay, let's move on. The next direction is quite neutral. The moon is neither bad or good, but the next direction is positive, since a favorable body of the sun approaches the moon. Now, let's think what the sun is. The sun denotes the affairs of the 8th house. It is the significator of the 8th house, since it is located there. Can the 8th house act as death here? The answer is no, because the sun is in a wonderful state. Therefore, it cannot destroy life. Moreover, the sun is a natural significator of life, located in its own sign. The sun, on the contrary, can rather save from death than bestow. But the 8th house also has other meaning, credits. And then we say that the sun in the 8th house can give large loans. Why large? Because it is a natural significator of gold and is full of dignity. We are talking about large loans, and we have two stories. Story number one. From the first direction, we saw that we had some events brewing, either related to Dad's ill health or with real estate and financial need, which should be related to loans. And let's think purely logically. What is better for us to connect? Dad's ill health, or the situation with the apartment and financial need with the loan? What is more logical? In my opinion, it is more logical to obviously connect real estate and finances with loans rather than Dad's condition with loans. Therefore, from purely logical considerations, I am still inclined to think that Saturn here does not mean Dad, but rather real estate. Well, according to this story, we have a situation of the acute need in connection with real estate and loans, which are allocated here. I move on and look for some clearly negative or clearly positive directions. I am skipping this direction because it is neither good nor bad. The stars themselves do not give anything. And now I see the next direction, which is clearly negative. Look, the square takes the worst features of Jupiter and sends the worst of Jupiter, in place of its fall, to a place where Jupiter is really, really bad. Thus, the worst of Jupiter is multiplied many, many times. Jupiter, as I said, is the life of the native. I am saying that the life of the native in its worst, so to speak, version, collected here, having fallen into a very difficult state. We can say that this is a very bad period of life, has approached Mars. And what does Mars mean in this chart? Mars in this chart can mean activity or money from the state or money from work. It can also mean illness, as we said, and it can also mean brothers and sisters. Let's logically combine one of these three meanings with what we already know. I said from the first two directions that a picture is emerging that there is something connected with real estate, borrowed funds, and with a great financial need in connection with real estate. And what is better to attach to this story? The diseases or siblings are less logically connected with money and real estate than natives' own actions or the salary or the money from the government. And the salary or money from the state fits perfectly to the financial context. We ask ourselves, what is more logical to weave in? We always look at the most logical and explainable option at the intersection. This is the logic of an astrologer. We do not search intuitively, we always search logically. Obviously, it is more logical to weave in the story Mars's meaning of actions or income. This also can be the state and money from the state. This option is also possible, and I say that the unfavorable aspect of life has approached the circumstances. This can mean two things. It can mean either a lack of money because it is spent somewhere, or it is a complicated period of activity, and all this is connected with borrowed money and credits. This is what is seen here in the third direction. I see that the third direction, in principle, goes in consonance with the first two. However, I go further and I look at the next direction. The next direction is not bad and not good. The promissor does not promise anything destructive and nothing constructive. The next direction also does not give anything bad, nothing good. I go to the second page. On the second page, I see the direction from Mercury, from its aspect, and this aspect is also not bad, not good. It does not give anything special, but here is an interesting thing. Look, Algol approaches Pars Fortuna, and here I pay attention to this. Why? This direction of the lonely star itself probably wouldn't interest me. But look, I have 3 directions before that, which start to paint some kind of picture with borrowed funds, with financial need, and with an apartment. And then I see that Algol, a rather destructive star, falls on the native's finance significator, which once again speaks of heavy expenses or a difficult financial situation that will suddenly come to the native, so to speak, as uninvited guests, according to the Algol star. And this direction, it also goes on line with those 3 that were before. Okay, I'm moving on. And I see that our next direction doesn't bring anything for November. The next direction also doesn't promise anything bad or good. Therefore, looking at all these directions, I do not know exactly how everything happened. I do not know the exact details, but all that I see so far is that this year the main events revolve around real estate and borrowed funds, which very forcibly, judging by the sudden Algol that approached, had to be taken for this real estate, and the loan will be issued in a large amount. I do not know the details. If I were an astrologer who would accompany Svetlana, I could express these general trends in some more specific words. But now I will ask Svetlana to tell what really happened in 97th, to what extent these trends were voiced by me were correct.
I can only say that these are 100% hits, and the situation was as follows. In 1997, the government's free real estate issuing program was active. We were on free housing. But since the situation with free housing was fading into oblivion, we were offered to apply for a subsidy. We agreed to apply for a subsidy, but the apartment that was offered to us did not suit us, and we were allowed to choose our own. But what we chose turned out to be much more expensive than the money that we had. Well, we had to take an apartment a bit smaller that we were counting on. We had already completed all the documents, made our payment. That is, we immediately completed all the documents and paid our share of the money, and the state delayed the payment for 4 months. And the company that sold us the house set interest. The interest was very high. That is, they were practically extortionate, which we could not pay. And using certain, let's say, resources that we had, we turned to them and they helped us. These percentages were removed, it is true, but the discount that was offered initially was also removed. It was a real struggle. This is how this situation was resolved, and we got the apartment.
I just put the ISIS as a significator. Remember that the direction is very sensitive to cusps. Why am I looking at this direction now? I want to confirm the following for myself. I see that the sextile of Saturn fell into the sign of Pisces, which is ruled by Jupiter, that is, you. This literally means the transfer of real estate. A particular facet of the 4th house goes to you. The aspect is the facet of the house. The aspect of the 4th house may be your dad. Another particular aspect could be your mom. Another one is real estate. The 4th house has many different aspects. And so I am talking about the fact that there is a particularly good, so to speak, beneficial facet of the 4th house falls into the place of your ownership. It is favorable aspect, since the sextile takes the best that is in Saturn, including the signification of real estate. If our birth time is correct, the directions are generally aligned with reality. Hence, the real estate should pass to you in around September 1997. So, in the end of the year, in September, October, or November, you should have finally received the apartment. I will not say the exact month now. This should already be looked at by the lunar and solar returns, but it should be the end of the year.
Well, that's absolutely right. In December 1997, it was finally registered.
That's it. It coincided. Thank you, Svetlana. You see, everything is confirmed wonderfully. And thus you see that the direction that we built, or rather the time of birth that we set, quite clearly corresponds with reality. All the directions that I saw, they gathered together in 1997. I want to note one more thing. If we look at the directions of 1997, they are both direct and converse. This means that if we twist the minutes forward and backward, the converse will begin to decrease the time, and the direct will increase it. And so, in order for all these three directions that I saw to gather in 1997 tightly enough, we need to set accurate birth time. We needed the right time and all these three directions for the same story, with real estate, gathered in 1997, otherwise they could have dispersed. As I said, direct ones go in one direction, converse directions in time indicate that dates that decrease as the time of birth moves forward. So that's it. We have a complete match. And, as you can see, this method has fully justified itself. Therefore, I will say the conclusion once again. I will make such a recap in order to use this method. First, you need this program, which is available on our website. Then, you fill in this table, in which the events are written. You indicate the significator, the promissor, where it falls, and the direction's meaning. Then, the difference between the predicted and the real date. You enter these differences in months for the birth certificate time, as shown here. Then, walk back and forth for a minute, fill in this table completely. And as a result, you get a graph like this. You just select these two columns. Select Insert, Diagram. Choose a bar chart or a linear one. I have a linear one here, and that's it. You have a graph in front of you. And on this graph, you are looking for a place where, on one side, the median is as close to zero as possible. On the other side, the average deviation. I will remind you once again, this is Stev S for the sample. This red line should also tend to zero. And in our case, it was 17, 26, and about 20 seconds. Actually, that's it, friends. This concludes our masterclass. Thank you, Svetlana, for participating.